Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Sharaglas. Hello, I'm Miriam. I'm the Afghan who cooks, but in this series, I'm not cooking Afghan food, not all the time. We are making foods that nourish the soul. Today, we are making one of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam's favorite dishes. Peace and blessings be upon him and his family. Thareed. Now, this dish is banging. I mean, that may not be the language they used back in the day, but it's real good. It's good for you, so let's go make it. We're gonna start by just heating up our pan and adding some olive oil. I'm gonna add about 1/4 cup. And this is really excellent Moroccan olive oil. I actually talk about this in one of the first videos in this Ramadan series. It's from Morocco. It is fantastic. And then to this hot oil, we're gonna add our onions. It's 1 onion. I did a video on Instagram asking what food connects you to your faith, to your deen, in your culture, whatever culture it is. What is the food that you think about, especially during this holy month of Ramadan? And next to talbina, Thareed was the most requested. It was the comment that I got the most. And I didn't know what it was, right? I didn't know that it was a Sunnah food, that Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, it was his favorite food. And there's an actual hadith that says something like, talbina, Aisha is amongst women the way that talbina is amongst food. So, I mean, he compared her to his favorite food, so that's kind of cute. Since I didn't know what it was, I looked it up thinking it was something that, would be fairly unusual. And when people described it as a broth, right, a meat over bread, I was like, oh, like chorba. We all have, almost all of us have this exact food. And I didn't realize where it came from, right? It comes from what we now know as Saudi Arabia, right? From Mecca and Medina, as a prophetic food, a food that they ate in that area, that then when Islam came to the various countries, everybody else started eating too. So it's kind of a fascinating way to think about the food that we consider ours, or we own it, us owning it, actually has this history that sometimes we don't even know anything about. My pot is so small. But you can see in it really nicely. We're gonna add our spices to this now too. We're gonna add a couple of tablespoons of ginger garlic paste. And here I have the triumvirate that we also use in Afghan cuisine, which is turmeric, coriander, and cumin. And here I have 2 tomatoes that I just sliced up. We're also gonna add a few cracks of ground black pepper. And when I say a few, I mean like a lot, okay? We're gonna do like 1.5 teaspoons of ground black pepper. I have seen so many variations of this. Some of them use curry powder, some add chili peppers. They add a number of things that I think would be unusual, including tomatoes. I think tomatoes would be very unusual to have. Maybe they did, I don't know. But every culture ends up making this in their own way. So I think that the black pepper gives it the heat that some of us would expect. And then the rule of thumb is for every pound of meat, you use 1 teaspoon of salt. So here we have almost 2 pounds of meat. So we're gonna use 2 teaspoons of salt, and then we're gonna check it to see, once we add the water and everything else and it cooks, to make sure it has enough salt. The meat getting brown and getting coated in all of that spices. The tomatoes are starting to cook down. It's all looking really, really lovely right now. Okay. Now I've seen this cooked a couple of different ways. Not a couple, I want to say like 100 different ways. Sometimes people will add all of the vegetables in at this point and then take them out and let the meat continue to cook. Some people will add the vegetables at the end after the meat has cooked for a little while. That's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna transfer all of this into a pressure cooker now. Let the meat cook until it's about 90% cooked, then add all of our vegetables and let it continue to cook that way. Let's have the magic of television switch this over to a pressure cooker. So we're gonna switch this into a much bigger and more efficient pot. I'm gonna throw some water into this pot so we get all of this tasty goodness out. Now we're gonna add a couple of cups of water. Let that come up to a boil, and then we're gonna just pressure cook it. This has come up to a simmer, so it won't take that long to come up to pressure. We're just gonna close it, let it come up to pressure, and once it comes up to pressure, I'm just gonna let it cook for about 15 to 20 minutes. That's all it's gonna take. Some turnips that I've peeled and cubed, some zucchini, and carrots. We're just gonna add those directly into our pot. We're gonna add that. We're gonna let that come up, back up to a boil and let it cook. I'm actually gonna pressure cook this too for about 5 minutes. Now we're gonna get ready to plate up our thareed. We're gonna take our bread. This bread is a couple of days old, and yes, I use scissors to cut my bread. And we're just gonna cut it up and put it on the bottom. We're gonna put the broth all over this bread. I've seen people actually add the bread into the broth as well. When people wrote to me about this dish, they said that the broth was poured over. I did taste this, and you know what? It doesn't taste like shorwa. It's a lot more flavorful. Afghan shorwa is a fairly simple dish. It doesn't use a ton of spices. So this is a little bit more of it's got a little bit more of a flavorful punch to it. I didn't add any chilies. I added no red pepper, nothing like that. During Ramadan, our people are not particularly used to a lot of spice. It doesn't sit really well in our stomachs. I know if you come from a culture that is used to spicy food, we have some spicier dishes coming up, like from Indonesia and Malaysia. And I'm looking forward to those. They're a little bit challenging, but also, you know, like I said, if you're used to it, it's great. If it's part of your culture to eat spicy food. One of the things that has been so fascinating to me is just learning all the different ways that people make one particular dish. So people would say, like, this is the dish that we eat, right? Like a big one is ketaput rendang from Malaysia, also from Indonesia. And my gosh, there are like thousands of ways to make this dish. So it just shows like we have so much in common, but also the differences that we have are pretty fun, right? So this series has been really fun for me to not just make, but also to research. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, hit the bell notification so you know every time we have a new video. Please leave a comment so that we can grow our little YouTube community here and get to know each other. The most important thing, I almost forgot the most important thing, subscribe. Please, 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 please subscribe. We've been chugging away at trying to grow this YouTube channel for a really long time, so you could help out by just hitting that little button right there. Until next time.